Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. My name is Jackson Mummy, and each week we'll be bringing you updated information about the bar exam and what you need to do in order to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. Ready to get started? Let's jump to it. Hey everybody, welcome. Today is Wednesday, May 8th. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined as usual today by Tracy and June and Amanda. Good to see all of you. Amanda, you feeling better? Back?
I'm feeling much better. Yeah. I think you can still hear it in my voice, but it's great to be healthy.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. And of course, we're all excited because we've got virtual boot camp coming up this weekend. It's going to be a great event, and we are very excited about that. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. We're now at the end of the results cycle from February 2024, or roughly at the end of that results cycle. And we've still got a couple more states I think we're waiting on, but we did get California results. And then we're going to take some questions that we got from students as we're starting now at about the 90-day point is where we are to the July 2024 exam. And we're starting to get some questions in about study. And then Tracy, what's your topic today?
Hibernation.
Okay, we'll see what that means. I'm not sure. And I don't know. And June, you're not hibernating. You're out there paddling along, right? Working. Getting everybody set up.
We are doing A-OK, and if you missed mindset coaching last night, it was awesome.
Yeah, don't miss June's coaching. If you could only get on one coaching call, I got to say, June's is the one that I would jump on just because there's just no substitute for that mindset work. And she's really fabulous. And I got to tell you, whether you're on Tracy's call or Amanda's call or June's call or Bobka's call, you're getting the benefit of very few people on the call. So it's pretty individualized training on those group coaching calls. And I would recommend that you check that out. Group coaching can be found.
Yes, everything's on the events tab. And remember, all the calls are great and open, and you should at least join a couple of them. And do not think of it like, oh, I'm wasting my time. I could be studying. Because probably what you glean from a coaching call will really help your studies, help struggle less with studies. So it's a win-win for the 30 minutes to hour you're on call versus the study time.
Yeah. And as we get closer to the exam, you tend to get, 10, 15 people on these calls. But right now, Amanda, you're getting 3, 4, 5 people.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, right now, guys, I don't know, but if you show up, you're like getting 1-to-1 with the majority of us right now. So now is the time, because the closer we get, like Jackson said, gets really busy. And then at that time, we only do the current testing session students as far as really working with. Everyone's welcome to join, but that's who we work with and talk to the most are the current testing students. But if you come on now, you're getting almost pretty much one-on-one access.
So hope you'll do that. I want to jump to talking about results, and we'll get to student questions here in a minute, but I do want to wrap up the results season for the most part. The big kahuna, if you will, in bar exam is California. They had almost 4,000 bar takers this last February, and the results are in. Overall pass rate was 34%. The first-time pass rate was 45%, and the repeat bar taker pass rate was 29%. I was fascinated to read some of the social postings and media that talked about what a great increase there was in the scores in California. What are they talking about? So I went back and did the research. Last February, the results in California were 33% overall, 28% repeaters. So it's a 1% jump. And while a 1% jump is better than a 1% decrease, come on, folks. Really? That's something to be excited about? Amanda, I know you really follow this whole question of equity and fairness in the exam. This test is just not fair, is it?
Yeah. I mean, we can see that by like the low numbers, but also just by taking a look at, does the exam actually measure what it purports to measure? And seemingly we don't have a lot of information that it actually does that, but it is curious to call a 1% jump such an increase, right? When to me, it would seem about consistent, give or take 1 or 2% seems that could be give or take the exam year or anything like that. So I think that that's definitely curious. And even though we can't do anything about the equity in the exam right now, we could definitely acknowledge that there's inequity and figure out the best way to move forward.
And when you're looking at a 45% first-time pass rate, both last year and this year, and then a 29% repeater pass rate, I'm just going to continue to say what I've been saying, which is some of you, I don't mean people on this call, but some bar takers out there are zombies. They are just going through repetitive steps and not changing anything. And they're not taking the exam as seriously as I think they have to. And the result of that is that this is a test that you just cannot back your way into. It's just not possible. First time pass rate? Wow, this test is brutal. And I think when people say, I'm just not going to do anything, I'm not going to spend any extra money, I'm just going to do what I've been doing, I don't even know why you bother to show up at the exam, honestly. It's just not a test that is amenable to that kind of approach to study. There's so much bad information out there. And this was the thing that struck me. The results came out last week in California, and there was this flurry of press releases talking about how great the results were. But am I in an alternate universe here? These are not great results. And there's no spin you can put on it that makes it great, but that's what they're putting out. So again, I would tell you, if you're getting your information in social media or Reddit or wherever it might be, check that pretty carefully. There's a lot of bad stuff out there, and this was one of them. The only other state that released last week was Michigan, and Michigan's results were 37% overall pass rate, 30% repeater pass rate. So again, really pretty much that same trend. And we saw that all across the country this year. Florida, Georgia, Texas, New York, California, all the big states all came in with these relatively low numbers. The only state we have not heard from of any size is New Jersey. I don't know where New Jersey is. They used to be a pretty fast jurisdiction. Now they just, whenever they're ready. So unfortunately, those of you in the New Jersey UB are still waiting on your results, but everybody else, we've got them in at this point. Tracy, any thoughts as you looked at the overall pass results from the February exam?
They're terrible. But what that says to me is that you have to really lean into this process. You have to work harder. This is not something that you can just slide on by. And you're going to have to commit your whole being to passing this exam and using the tools that we have for you. It used to be that more people pass than not, but that's just not the case anymore. And so you got to commit and invest in your future.
If you are watching this or listening to this and you have not started your preparation for July 2024, clock is ticking. You need to be going now. You don't have the luxury of waiting till the end of May. I spoke with somebody the other day that said, I want to wait till the end of the month, and then I'm really going to push in June and July. And I'm like, I don't know why you'd give up those extra weeks. There are people studying right now, and they're going to have an advantage on you. Congratulations to those of you that are studying. But for those of you that are still licking your wounds from February, you just don't have that luxury anymore. And I know that's hard to hear, but it's a reality. So that's where we are in results. Hasn't been great news, but again, not surprising news. I want to take a minute now to talk about, Tracy and Amanda both mentioned how you've got to be proactive at this point. Certainly one of the things you can do to be proactive is to sharpen your skills. And so today is our deadline day to register for our virtual boot camp coming up this Friday and Saturday, May 10th and 11th. If you've not registered, there's still time, but this is the time that you've got to do it. I want to talk about what virtual boot camp is and what it's going to include. We've got registrations, not as many as I'd like, to be candid, because I think more people need this level of service. But during this boot camp, we are going to work with you on essay writing. Tracy, you've assigned an essay for people to write. They're going to submit their essay to you, and then you're going to critique it in small sessions with them.
And then give them an opportunity to rewrite and work on it again the next day.
And Amanda, you're doing the same thing with an MPT, correct?
We'll be doing MPT, giving the question out beforehand, and then getting an opportunity to write together, and then also write on your own with feedback.
Yeah. And it's really important to get this feedback. If you are paying an hour of time with Tracy or Amanda, it would cost you a substantial part of what you're paying for boot camp. And so that alone is a huge benefit, right? Well, this turns out to be a real bargain all the way around, because we're not just stopping with MPTs and essays. There's also a multi-state. And Amanda, you want to talk a little bit about what you're going to do with the MBE training breakouts?
Yeah. again, like as Jackson was saying, if you were working with me one-on-one, I would go over the strategy, which we're going to talk about, how to approach MBE questions really step by step. Jackson mentioned there's no really replacement for the mental side. We're going to talk about that too, right? How do we get in a good mental space to attack MBE? Again, we've got 90 days to go. How do we look at the MBE for learning? How do we use it for learning at this point and not hyperfixate on results? So we'll talk about all that. And then we're going to actually get a chance to practice some questions that we have put together specifically for boot camp, because these kind of questions are really a good measure of if students are using selective intuition by answering and debriefing how it got to the answer together. And so you'll get an opportunity to practice with your groups and with me. So full out, like high level overview of how to approach it, and then put that approach into practice.
Yeah. And this is really important because one of the things that I've seen as I'm looking at scores of bar takers from February is that selective intuition, when it's applied properly, particularly with photo reading, has remarkable results. We see people scoring, in the top 15, 20 percentile nationwide. But then Wile E. Coyote, they run off the edge of the cliff, they look down and they go, oh my God, I didn't memorize anything. And they stop using selective intuition and they start trying to figure it out from their conscious brain, and they literally crash and burn. It's really important. I don't want to let this go by. And I'm going to bring June in here in a minute. The technique works, but it only works when you're willing to trust it, when you believe in it, when you actually follow through. And June, if I can get you back up on screen, I think there's an issue here with people not trusting themselves and not trusting the process. And so then they've got the skill, but they don't use it, or they don't use it consistently and they blow up. Is that an accurate way to put it?
They're either hanging on to the baggage of the previous exams and just letting that story replay in their head, or there's just this doubt, or even the fact of, I don't deserve it. I'm not worthy of this, is a deep down emotion. Nobody's saying that out loud, but that's really what is deep down. Almost like they're an imposter. Like, how did I get this far kind of thing? And that's not true. None of that is true. A lot of times when we think we're not good at things, it's because of a storyline we've told ourselves, or it was something we said to help us out of the situation or to get through a situation or whatever. And that's great. It was useful at that time. It is not useful now. And the beauty of our story is we can change it at any time. And how do we change it? By simply saying something different. Instead of, I hope to pass, I will pass. I am going to pass. And be very specific. I am going to pass on July 25th, 2024, and my score will be this. And we actually had a student this past year who was at boot camp who wrote down his score. And what was his score, Jackson? What he wrote down at boot camp. Yeah. So the power of the mind, the power of thought, the power of belief is strong.
It is. And we can give you all the tools. We can give you the techniques, but you've got to be able to use them. You got to trust them. And so a big part of what happens at boot camp, live or virtual, is that we combine the technique with the mental piece. So June is going to be doing her coaching on mindset, but Tracy's going to be talking about superego, which is that's another way that we just blow ourselves up, isn't it, Tracy?
Absolutely. We just came across this field of study in the last year, Jackson and I, in another context, and realized how applicable it is to our students here. And it goes hand in hand with what June is talking about. So I'm excited to present not only your teaching, but my way of teaching and getting at this idea of superego.
Yeah. So let me just recap. You're going to be working on essays. You're going to be working on MPTs. You're going to be working on multi-state bar exam or multiple choice if you're in Florida as well. You're going to be working on mindset and all of those, plus specific exercises that June's got. And then added to that, I'm going to be refreshing your skills in photo reading or teaching you photo reading if you're not familiar with it. And I'm going to be working with you on mind mapping. Tracy's going to be working with me as well to do that. One of the things that I've discovered is that people get floppy in their technique. They start moving around and trying to find shortcuts, and they don't trust it. We've got a question coming up where somebody says, I got to believe in photo reading. Yeah, you do. There's no reason to do it if you don't believe it. It doesn't work if you don't use it. But when you use it, it's pretty remarkable. And I know, Amanda, you were exposed to it when you came to boot camp. And it is remarkable, isn't it, to see what that process is like.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Actually, we talked about this in my group coaching photo reading because some people are just getting into it, which is great. And I talked about how I wasn't a photo reader when I took the bar exam, but learning it and then practicing it in my everyday life has been really cool. And it's something I still do use right now. So you can do it at any time. And it's great for those of you who are starting out being photo readers because you'll also have this skill forever.
Yeah. And so if you're in the course, if you're a photo reader and you didn't pass in February, you should be at virtual boot camp. I really believe you need to be there. I don't know what the justification is to not be there. The skill set you're going to build on, the new things you're going to learn, the ability to take the skills you've been working on and improve them really comes together. Boot camp is $1,200. If you were doing a session on MPTs, a session on essays, a session on MBEs, a session with mindset coaching, the photo reading course, and all of those pieces, you'd be spending thousands of dollars for those. And so this is a pretty great deal. Now, I'm sure June's already put the link up. As I said, the registration deadline is today. You can use our third-party partners like Klarna and Affirm or Afterpay, and you can spread your payments out over months. If you are unable to qualify under Klarna or Affirm or Afterpay, reach out to us. We do have a monthly payment plan. It's going to cost you more, but you can do it. We want you there. We don't make much money on this. That's not our point. But our purpose in doing this is for you to pass the exam. This is a tool for you. And I got to say, I'd love to know why you wouldn't come to this. So if you're listening to this or seeing this and you're not going to come, send me an email, Jackson@Celebration Bar Review. Tell me why you don't think this is useful, because to me, it's a no-brainer. We're going to be a few hours on Friday, a few hours on Saturday. You do it from the comfort of your home, and I think it's going to be awesome. So check it out. Jump on there. There's still room. We'd love to see you on Friday. Any other thoughts about virtual boot camp? Did I miss anything there?
And I just want to say, sometimes it helps to have a different person's perspective of your struggles to help you get out of your own way. I myself have mentors that I work with, even though I've been doing this for quite a while. And it's always good to have someone to take a look at what you're doing or what's going on in your life and give you another perspective, or maybe the collective of the group I see at boot camp helps each other solve problems and struggles. And I think it's also important to feel like you're not alone. I know when we're studying and we're struggling with, what is it, contracts or Civ Pro is what I keep hearing, that it feels like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? I'm the only one that's struggling with this. Not true. And just understanding that people around you are going through this just like you are, and that they're struggling as well, and how they're handling it can be very therapeutic, can be very helpful in your study journey.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We hope to see all of you this weekend. Let's get to some student questions. We've got, since we were talking about photo reading, I want to jump into a couple of photo reading questions that we got. One of the questions was from a student that said, I just finished photo reading civil procedure, and I'm looking at my old mind maps, and then I've seen all of this before. So should I just do practice questions? No, that's not it. I think that what you want to do, the purpose of photo reading, first of all, is to layer it on. You should continue to photo read all the time. Then your mind maps are not static. And I think that's part of the assumption here is, oh, I did this mind map before and it's static and I'm not going to do anything more with it. I'm just looking at it. I don't think that's the way to use a mind map. What I would be doing here is, having now just photo read the subject, I would go back and add to my mind map what stands out, what's new. Then as I start to do question practice in that subject, I would start adding the answer explanations to my mind maps as well. And as I write essays, I would look at each legal problem that's being tested in an essay and add that concept to my mind maps as well. That to me is the value. Then you start reading your mind maps out loud and recording that so that you can start listening to it at night as you're sleeping. So in other words, my view of a mind map is that it's dynamic and it continues to grow. Amanda, you use mind maps, right?
Yeah.
Is that the way that you would teach the use of them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like a lot, we cover this a lot in group coaching because people want to make their mind maps like perfect. And when do I write them? And then I add to them. Now it's all messed up. That's not the point. They're a tool that's going to be evolving. So if I'm doing a mind map, like one of my first mind maps was on the different kinds of homicide. It's one of the first things that's covered in the course, I think. It's funny because I can remember it so well. I can still see it in my mind. This one I did like vertically and the other ones I did horizontally. So it's just interesting. And that was not my last mind map on homicide crimes, right? That was like when I was just learning the difference between manslaughter, first degree, second degree. Then later on, I'm digging down deeper. I'm looking at defenses. There's other things that come up. Like that first mind map, even though I could still see it, it was thrown out like a few weeks into my study. I didn't need that mind map anymore because it's in my head. Now I have a more detailed mind map. So it's like, you're going to cycle through these kinds of mind maps, add to them, subtract to them. And then sometimes you just don't need them anymore because they're in your head. You got it. So it's okay. They're not going to be, there's no such thing as a perfect mind map. The other thing I will say is if you email us that, can you look over my mind map and tell me if it's correct? It's really hard for me to answer that question because I don't tell me if I got the law correct. Your mind map is so particular to you. Like mine had little drawings of jury people and circled and it meant something to me for civil procedure, but I really can't tell you that. Like I just can't because it's so particular to you. So it's just think about that. I think it's a good thing. If I were to email Amanda and say, is this correct? Like that there's not a correct mind map and you have to be able to, as Jackson said, talk over your mind map, talk it to yourself and then listening to yourself with the recording is a great strategy.
Yeah. And I think the other part of this is that sometimes people are like, I already did the multiple choice questions. Yeah. Do them again and look at your mind map and see if you've got the concept in your mind map. And if you're thinking about the mind map as being a dynamic document, then you will be always adding to it and working at it. When it comes to doing essays, I wouldn't just do one essay in the subject, particularly if it's a weaker subject. I would take a study session. If you're in the UBE, it's 30 minutes per essay, 30 minutes to review it, let's say in your mind map. And I do 3 essays in that subject for a study session and just go deeper into it if you're going into it a second time. So if you're retaking, I guess what I'm saying is retaking doesn't mean doing the same thing you did before. It's not a process of just repeating it by going deeper. It's learning and adding to your work that you're doing, I think. The other thing that this student said was, should I do 2 MPTs? That has nothing to do with civil procedure. You should be doing MPTs 1 a week, probably leading up to the exam. If you're having trouble with MPTs, if you're okay with them, maybe 1 every 2 weeks. But I think sometimes we get too rigid in this structure. The idea is work to your weaknesses, work on what you don't know, get better at what you don't know. And I say this, and Tracy, you and I are going to talk about mind maps at boot camp. I don't think it's particularly valuable to just look at a mind map. I think you got to do something with it, don't you?
Yes, that's not the way our learning centers operate. Our learning centers are always taking in new information, reevaluating, and repositioning the information that's coming to us in a relational way. So what we're really talking about here is, I think the student's question is, should I just keep doing transactional learning? And the answer is absolutely not. You need to move it to relational learning. And that's when Amanda's talking about looking at her mind maps and then making little jury people, I like that. And they stand for something. That's relational thinking. Defenses and claims, arguments and counter arguments, those all need to be in relationship with each other. If you're just staring at a piece of paper because you did it before, maybe a year ago, and you think, that don't suffice, I just need to look at this more, you're not going to get it because it's just transactional. You have to get into it. You have to take a knife and fork and eat it. And you have to understand what the taste is and how tastes go together and how they don't go together. You have got to dig into it.
Yeah. And along these same lines, I like this idea of transactional versus relational. We got a series of questions from a photo reader, and I want to and I'm not picking on this person, but I think this is typical of what we tend to see from folks. The individual said, I was looking at the online course, and it says in the instructions after photo reading to create a mind map based on the outline table of contents, and you should use 1 to 2 hours to create your mind map. Now, here's the student's question. When it says use 1 to 2 hours to create your mind map, does this count the time we mind map the table of contents? And does this include time during or after the lecture in adding notes? Okay, I'm not even sure what to do with this. Look, 1 to 2 hours means get into the material, start creating your mind map. So that, yes, it includes some time with the table of contents. I don't know. I'm going to mind map the table of contents in virtual boot camp in about 5 minutes or less. That's a mechanical task. It's really digging in and starting to create that relational piece of material where you've just photo read a subject. Now you start to work with it. You open the book and you spend 1 to 2 hours going through the outline, mind mapping it. What about the lectures? I would say run the lecture for a while. When you feel like you've seen enough of the lecture, stop it and mind map for a while, go back to the lecture and mind map and go back. But this isn't I think people make it too rigid. I think they're trying to find a formula, and it's not so much a formula. I'll go back to what Amanda said. We can't review your mind map and tell you if it's right for you or not. In the same way, we can't tell you exactly how to mind map as you're going through a lecture. Some people like to listen to an entire 3-hour lecture and then go back. You've got the text in front of you in the lecture, and they mind map from there. Or they mind map again from the text after they've taken notes in the lecture. I think sometimes we get into this rigid mindset where we say, if it's 1 to 2 hours, I've got 37 seconds here and I got 58 minutes here and don't do that. This is a more, what would I say, organic, fluid approach? Fluid? Is that, and I think that's what we're trying to do. And just don't go over 2 hours. I think that's the point. Don't go over 2 hours is really what we're trying to do. And I think that would help. Now, this same student said, they were commenting about the interview we did with Elizabeth recently, who passed in February. And Elizabeth said she used photo reading on days when she didn't feel like she wanted to do any specific word for word reading or she was too tired. She did photo reading sometimes and not all the time. And the student said, this validates my discomfort in photo reading only. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that. I should be reading everything word for word. Look, the best way to use photo reading, the best way to use it is just believe in it, trust it, do it. I find that when people are trying to do this yin yang, I'm going to photo read sometimes, I'm going to word for word read sometimes, it's not particularly effective. Just photo read. Then when you go back to review, to activate, then you can do super dipping, skittering, some other things that I think are helpful. But really, there's no value to reading word for word. I think that's really the point I want to make, is that, Amanda, you were a word for word reader. You had great scores on the bar. There's no question about that. But
I wouldn't say I wasn't a word for word reader. I would say that too. But I will say, I want to talk about this question actually, Jackson, if you let me.
Go ahead. Please.
I want to say this is confirmation bias.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
Somebody did good and they did what you want. So now this student, and again, I'm not picking on the student, I'm just pointing out we all have biases, right? This is, you heard confirmation bias. So if you heard an interview of another student that said, I took 100 multiple choice questions a day and they did well on the bar exam, and you were like, see, it validates my discomfort. I need to do, of course it validates you, right? And our student did really well. Okay. I wasn't a photo reader and I did really well, except I don't think I'm a word for word reader. I think I'm skittering or skipping or doing some version of that. But you could pick up a confirmation bias in anything. Ultimately, I always say to students at the end, it's your exam. So you have to do what you want. We can lead you and say, this is what we recommend. And this student, our student, didn't take exactly what we recommended, right? And that's okay. And she did well. There are multiple ways to skin a cat, right? But don't you can find, you want a lot of confirmation bias, just go on Reddit. You'll get all the confirmation bias you need, including the people who say, I would not take anything except for a big box top 3 course. They'll say that too. Then you can validate the fact that you can walk away from CBR, right? So it's that kind of thing is whatever makes you sleep better at night. The second thing I will say to you is that there is a lot of studies that have been done on learning styles, okay? Learning styles are so deeply ingrained in our educational system, but to no efficacy. Okay. So in other words, the way you're most comfortable learning is your learning style. And actually, when we look at it's so deeply ingrained. Teachers got to teach to the learning style, teach the learning style. And the measures that say, does this actually work, are so abysmal, but it's so deeply ingrained. And the reason is because people typically learn best in the learning style that makes them uncomfortable. And so there's this idea of comfort. I'm more comfortable with visual. I'm more comfortable reading word for word. That's great. But actually studies show that you are not learning best. You learn at the reason those like flowery quotes, learning begins at the moment that discomfort starts. It's actually true. It's backed by research. And even though you all probably were in an educational system that catered towards learning styles to make everybody comfortable, it actually doesn't have much efficacy at all. And usually, in order to learn a very hard topic, you have to jump out of your learning style and do something that makes you uncomfortable. So I would say that about photo reading as well and mind mapping. A lot of you feel I don't learn this way. I hear that a lot. That's not my learning style. There's something that you've been taught that unfortunately is just not true. And don't take my word for it. Look the research up. Right?
Yep.
So there's been studies done on this. It's just much part of our educational system. So if you're feeling discomfort, chances are you're actually learning.
Yeah. June, you want to add to that?
I just wanted to try kind of what Amanda says. As humans, we are amazing at taking anything and warping it, working it, making it either our excuse or our success. So we can do that with anything. And it's, again, our perspective and the mindset we're in. And like Amanda was saying, you truly don't learn if you're real comfy. Uncomfortable is the genius zone. That if you're not a little scared, and people, I'm not scared at all. That worries me.
Exactly.
I'm a little scared. I want you a little fearful because that means you're on the right path.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're not scared of anything, then you need to change your life. Okay. Because I'm talking a good scare, a good fear, a good excitement, a good joy, a little bit of apprehension. These are all normal, good things that show that we're doing the right thing and where we should be. And again, the learning style is exactly what Amanda says. Anytime we're like, I know this, I got this, it doesn't really stick. But the minute you don't know it and you're really, we get our biggest lessons and where it was the hardest for us to learn.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a lot about this over the virtual bootcamp weekend, but photo reading is not satisfying to your conscious brain. It's just not. I've been doing this for over 15 years. I've photo read thousands of books, literally. And every time I sit down to photo read, my conscious brain tells me that I'm a fake and an imposter and it doesn't work. And I suspect Paul Sheely's conscious brain says the same thing to him. And I have to say to my conscious brain, thank you very much. Now you can go away and go drift off and we're going to get to the real work here. If you do what we ask you to do, if you buy in and you follow it, it works. There's 100 videos up on our website. And of those 100 videos, I would guess that about 60 of them were photo readers, maybe more, people who said, I don't know why it worked or how it worked. It just worked. And that's the reality. And when you do that, what you begin to see is you get the results. But if you're doing what Amanda described, I think that's really wise of you, Amanda. It is confirmation bias. It's looking for the way out. It's looking for the permission to not do what we're asking you to do. And I got to tell you, in this world with these pass rates, you're not going to get permission from us that way. It's your journey. You get to do it the way you want, but we're not going to tell you, oh, sure, skip photo reading or don't mind map or ignore what we're telling you about timeframes and then expect you to pass. It just doesn't happen. And I think that's the reality that we all see here. So any other comments from?
Yeah, I think with the pass rates too, right? We have to accept that like the people we are today, and I talked about this a few months ago, I think it was like that you have to become a whole new version of you, especially if you are a repeat taker. And that's not a bad thing, right? I'm not saying the person you are today is inadequate, but you need to become the best version of yourself. And that is going to require discomfort and trying new things, right?
Yeah.
So I just think you got to buy into that. And you're on the road to becoming the best person, this best version of yourself to pass this bar. And that's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And to finish up with this one student, they said they photo read every night, but should they also activate every night? No, that wasn't the instruction. The instruction was just photo read at night. You activate when you're working during the hours that we've given you. So we'll talk more about that at boot camp, but just wanted to give that information. Someone else wrote, it's taking me more time to finish the assignments, reading and mind mapping. Should I stick to the timing indicated in the course, or should I finish it and then move to the next assignment? Stick to the timing indicated in the course. I created these time frames and I've modified them over the years, but I created them to keep you moving at a particular pace and to recognize the inherent repetition built into the course. If you take too long on any one subject now, you won't have time at the end to do the repetition that's built into the course. I describe this as an all-you-can-eat buffet. If I always get behind that person in the buffet line that wants to put everything on their plate, Tracy, and in that moment, just keep moving through the course. Don't try to get it all right now. You will get multiple attempts, multiple exposures to the material. And so and if it's taking you longer to finish the assignment, it's because you're special, but you're not. This is one of the things that comes up all the time. I constantly get emails from people that say, you don't understand, I'm special. And then we're followed by 2 paragraphs of why they're special. And they are. Everyone is God's creation and you are all special and unique. But when it comes to studying, do it this way under these timeframes, because we know you're coming back to the table later and you don't need it all right up front. Okay, so that's my thought. So since I picked on you, Tracy, you want to say something about this?
Absolutely not. But the next time we go to a buffet, you're going to be in line ahead of me.
Ahead of me. Okay, good. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. A couple of quick questions that I want to get to before we get to Tracy's hibernation discussion. We did have another student that asked about whether or not they should handwrite the bar exam. We talked about this at length the last week. Do not handwrite ever, never. We had a student get a 0 with a handwritten essay answer. The bar examiners are really sending a message here. They do not want handwritten answers. This student said, I didn't register for the laptop because I was worried about technical issues. Hey, look, it's 2024. Technical issues. This is not the bar exam of 2014. There aren't any technical issues. Just have a good computer, a good laptop, a power cord. You're fine, really. We get 1 out of 5,000 people with a technical issue. That's not a reason to handwrite. You got a better chance of getting a 0 for a handwritten essay than having a technical issue with your laptop. And then they said, if I still do it handwritten, do I need to bring my own pen and paper? Let me say it again. Do not handwrite. Simple. Okay.
Do you really think you're going to walk into a courtroom
Yeah.
as a lawyer with a handwritten pleading? Do you really think you're going to go into a senior partner's office when they've asked you to write a memo and you've written it in handwriting? Do you really think that's how you're going to practice law? This is what I want to talk about in just a couple of minutes.
Okay. All right. Let me get to a couple more questions and we'll get there. So there you go. One of the new offerings that we have in the course is what we call video critiques. And we've got some students that now have registered for the video critique package, and they're asking how that process works. Essentially what happens is that if you're in the video critique program, you will be invited to send a certain number of essays to me. I do this right now, not Tracy or Amanda or Babka, and I will record a video of my analysis of that piece of writing and send that video back to you. And so the question was, how does this work? Is it a Zoom call? No, I am not working with you one-on-one. You're submitting your work to me as a PDF or a Word document, and then I'm recording a typically 3 to 8 minute video in which I evaluate that piece of work and send it back to you. So all you have to do is submit the work to me, then I'll send it back, and I'll also inform you of how many more of those critiques you have available. This is something new. It's not something we've done previous to this exam administration. So I'm excited about it. We'll see how it works. And I've started doing some of these video critiques, and I hope that they're helpful. I don't think it's as useful as a one-on-one coaching call, to be sure. A 30-minute one-on-one coaching call is still going to be more valuable. But if you're just trying to get some quick feedback on your written work, whether it's an NPT or a PT or an essay, this is a great way to do it. So that's the process there. And then last question is, a student said, I just finished one of the MBE subjects, and I'd like to do more than the 25 multiple choice questions that were in the syllabus. Is there a bank of questions? Yes. June had a great answer to the student. Yes, there's a bank of questions, A. B, don't use them. Not yet. There's a reason that we've structured the course the way we have. And this is one of the things I find fascinating. People come to us, and understandably, they've seen the big box approach, and they think that's how they're supposed to do things. And so then they say, let me take your course and put it into that structure. And that's totally not what we're doing here. We only want you doing 25 multiple choice questions because we want you to mind map them and then go away from that subject for a while. And then we'll bring you 25 more, which is how the repetition and the learning occurs. And so I know what the student wants to do is they think, I did 25, 50 would be better, 75 even better, 100 would be even better right now. But that's not the learning style. The learning style is to have you reflect and marinate and let the roux, cook for a while, and then come back and do more questions and add those to your mind map, and then leave it and come back and do more and continue to do that. So there are more questions in this course than you'll get through for most people. There's 2,100, 2,200. And we're going to get to full length exams at the end, and we're going to do mixed question practice. There's a lot of things still to come. But for right now, just follow the assignments as you see them so that you move to the next subject, right? Because that's one of the things I think that happens, Amanda, right? If somebody gets stuck in a subject and they just start grinding on it because it's not a good enough result for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, like you said, the repetition's already built into the course. So don't be afraid to move on. We will circle back to it.
Yeah. And you'll learn better by doing that. So don't try to modify the course. Now, I want to give this student props. They asked the question so that we could correct them quickly. The thing that frustrates me the most is when people just go and do it and then tell us later, I spent 2.5 weeks on torts. Huh? And then they say, how do I catch up? And then it's tough for us to provide an answer in that circumstance. So you got to be, in general, if you follow the structure works, we've developed this structure for 20 years before I owned the course. It was being developed. Then I modified it over the last 30. So there's 50 years of experience in this course. It works. If you'll just do what we ask you to do, it will work. When you start tinkering with it in significant ways, then I think you reduce the efficacy of it. And I want to encourage you to not take that, at least not without talking to us. All right. So that's what we see. Good questions. And I appreciate, and I hope everybody that sends in these questions understands we're not picking on you. These are representative of what we get from a lot of people. And I think they're good teaching questions and probably represent the things that others are thinking about. Having said that, Tracy, you wanted to talk about hibernation, and I think I know where you're going to go with this, but let me turn it over to you and let's see where we go on this topic.
All right, thanks. Last week, I had a rather complicated metaphor and allegory using the book, The Alchemist. This week, I'm just going to use a very simple mind image, and that's of a hibernating bear. So if you think of yourself as the hibernating bear, having taken the exam maybe in February, maybe last July, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and you didn't pass. So you're back here trying to get going again. You've been hibernating. You have to have your time of sleep. You have to have your time of grief. You have to have the time where you're not taking any more in. You're just going away from the world. You're just going into your cave, feeling sorry for yourself or exhausted and just need a long winter sleep. Okay, we give you that. That's fine. It's spring. Wake up, get out of your cave. What's the first thing a bear does when they get out of their cave after hibernating? Jackson, what's the answer? What's the first thing they do?
They eat.
They eat. They eat and they eat and they eat several times their body weight. But they eat and then they rest. And then they eat something else and then they rest. And then they go somewhere else and they forage somewhere else. But they are single-minded when they wake up from their hibernation. This is what I want you to be. I want you to be the bear that has awakened from your hibernation. And I want you to eat CBR until you have a bellyache. And then I want you to rest. And then I want you to go somewhere else in the forest and eat more CBR until you have a bellyache. And then I want you to rest. And then I want you to go and eat yet even some more. It's time to wake up, people. You do not have time to hibernate anymore. We have lots of sustenance for you. We have lots of nutrition for you. We have well over 100 students on the course right now. And we have less than 10% that have made the commitment to themselves to be in virtual boot camp. How difficult is it really for you to be in virtual boot camp? You don't have to go anywhere. You don't even have to get out of your pajamas. Just show up and let us help you. How difficult is it for you to undertake personal coaching? Again, you can do it in your pajamas, but you have to write some essays. Yes, you have to write, and it keeps you on track. How difficult is it for you to go and work with June on mindset coaching and calming the chaos? Maybe you have to meet some of your fears and some of the things you don't want to admit about yourself. These are things that will help you get out of those old patterns that Amanda was talking about. You have to get out of the Iraq pattern. You have to get out of the idea that you just look at something that you've done 2 years ago and it's going to serve you today. You have to be dynamic when you come out of hibernation, not static. Not static, because you'll starve to death and it'll happen over and over again. Let's go, people. Wake up. It's spring.
There you go. Reminds me of some of the bench slaps I got from the bench. June, you got that wide-eyed look?
I'm awake. I'm ready. Let's do it.
You're ready. Okay. We're ready. Our team is ready for this weekend. We are excited. We've been planning and preparing. I know that we are looking forward to having this chance to help you. That's why we do this. It really is. And I think sometimes people get into an odd adversarial position in which they think it's just about the bar review just wants to take advantage of me and make money off of me. I got to tell you, that's not the case for anybody here. Amanda, Tracy, June can all make way more money, I promise you, doing other things. This is paying it forward. And honestly, even at this point in my career, after 30 years, there are other things I could be doing. I do this because it matters. I had a phone call with a student who passed this week, and it was that's the moment. That is, I wish that everybody on the team could have those moments the way that I get to be the lucky guy that gets them. But that's why we do what we do. It is literally because we know it changes the face of our profession. And I know, Amanda, this has been a big issue for you, paying forward, working forward to change our profession. We're on their side, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about it all the time, like together. And I think after I took my bar, I had talked about how it's like a bittersweet result for me. Yes, I passed, I did so well, but I want more for our profession to think about more equitable, more like humane, more actually measurable way to bring competent attorneys into the bar on attorneys we need. And I think that the data speaks for itself. Jackson talks about the data every week during results season, and we can look at that data further in terms of California has some data out there available in terms of racial groups that are less represented in passing, socioeconomic groups, gender, and we can see that it's not equitable, right? We're like working towards that and we're speaking out loud about it, but we're also helping those who might come from disadvantaged situations attack the bar in a different way, and it's been shown to work for them. And that's what we're here to do. And even if you don't come from a disadvantaged situation, you are still in a good spot here, right? At CBR. It will work for all people. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do hope that if you're watching or listening to this and you're on the fence about boot camp, that you join us. If you're not coming to boot camp, get help, get the upgrade to coaching. Let us put our resources behind you. We're smart people who know how to pass the bar exam. and we can help you pass the bar exam. You just got to give us a chance to let us do that work for you. And ultimately, I think I'm looking at June here because this is really her lane, but get out of your own way. Just get out of your way and really do what you got to do. As you come out of hibernation, just stop being that grouchy old bear and let us show you what you got to do. Did I say that right, June? Yeah, she's muted.
I want to say one thing. Amanda has talked about this before too. And I've heard this from a student a couple days ago about the cost of these upgrades. And there's a reason for that, y'all. Because, and here's what I call it. It's called skin in the game. Trust me, Jackson and I, Trace, we've all given freebies. And almost everyone who's gotten a freebie didn't show up, didn't really show up 100%. When you have skin in the game, you are more apt to show up. Like Amanda says, it's scientific research. You are more apt to show up for yourself because money, what is money? Money is an exchange of energy. Exchanged something to receive something. And when we keep looking at it that way, we see it differently. And again, a lot of times we have to exchange energy to up-level our own. There will be more energy to come. I think we get in a scarcity mindset a lot of times around money. More energy will come because I want you to think of it long and hard. How much is it costing you to not? I'm just going to leave it at that. And yes, we love what we do. And if we could do it all, we would, but we don't. Our time is valuable. Your time is valuable. And we keep it low. So there is some skin in it.
That's great.
I think it's important to remember it's not right. We're not a nonprofit. We can own that. I also would say, like, I had been in that position when I first graduated law school. I did not take a review course to pass the New York State Bar before it was UBE because I didn't have anything. I went to law school on a scholarship. I had no help from my parents. I worked through law school to put myself a roof over my head, right? And while my peers registered for $5,000, I think it's $3,000 courses, I was like, I can't do this. And I will say that looking back on that situation, though, it was money dysmorphia. Am I glad I didn't take Barbary? Yeah. Was it a chip on my shoulder that I passed the bar without a review course? Yeah. I did that. But looking back on the situation, I come from low socioeconomic status. So now I've done a lot of work with money, as June was saying, money as energy, and about it not being a zeros game. And yeah, I didn't have money then, but you know what I did have? I had credit. I could have used credit, right? I could have done other things. There were things that I could have done, and I didn't. And part of that was not being educated as someone who comes from a low socioeconomic status, not being educated about credit, not being educated about investing in myself, because all my money went for basic needs, right? And I thought that's what you were supposed to do. I didn't realize that people who are educated about money invest in themselves. So if I could go back and tell Amanda 2013, what should you do? It would probably be invest in a course, not Burberry, but invest in a course. Don't make it too hard on yourself. Sorry, I named them. I shouldn't have done that, but who cares? No, I wouldn't have invested in Burberry. I didn't. That's my opinion. This is not the opinion of the CBR, but I'm just telling you, like, I've been where you are, and I can tell you that, like, it was a mistake. I made a mistake not to do that. Even though it turned out okay for me, it was a mistake not to invest in myself, right? And so when I took Jackson's course and CBR, I knew enough then. I had the benefit of having done the work, right, around money and say, there's a way that I can invest in myself, and I'm deserving.
You all deserve it. You all are worthy.
You deserve to get on with your life.
Yeah, exactly. And we love you, but go away. Get out. Pass the bar. All right. With that, we will see hopefully more and more of you this weekend for a virtual boot camp. And we will be back next Wednesday with our next session of Q&A. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, June. Thank you, Amanda. Great session. Appreciate it, everybody. And have a great study day time. See you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.